The gun used to target President Trump was the AR-15. It's America's most popular and divisive icon. It is the most popular rifle that's been at the center of so many mass shootings. At schools, at movie theaters, at grocery stores, just about any place Americans gather. It's not usually the weapon of choice for snipers, as it has limited range and smaller bullets, according to the Wall Street Journal. 20 million gun owners have one, up from 400,000 in the early 1990s. What it lacks in range, it makes up for in firepower. It unleashes a high volume of lead at close range. It's also become the center of debate over gun ownership in this country, politics, and threats of a gun ban.
Trump once said in an interview with a gun blog, gun banners are unfortunately preoccupied with the AR-15 magazine capacity, grips, and other aesthetics precisely because of its popularity. In 2016, he won the backing of the National Rifle Association, and today, though, the gun control movement is seizing this moment to see whether it can get some GOP members on its side. Democrats should introduce a gun control bill called the Donald Trump Safety and Gun Control Bill and make Republicans vote against it, said one person on social media. So the gun, yes, is an AR-15, which I understand, according to the Wall Street Journal, can be accurate up to 600 yards away. So this was well within that range. He was about 150 yards away, the shooter was, on that rooftop. Now, it's not a sniper rifle, obviously. It's not that weapon, which has been a fear of that assassins would use that in the past. This is the first time the AR-15 is being used specifically for an attempted assassination. The Ronald Reagan would-be assassin, John Hinckley Jr., used a revolver when he attempted to do that in 1981. Now, obviously, the AR-15 has been used in mass shootings, usually at close range, as in the various school shootings where that was used, although in the Vegas mass shooting, the person did use an AR-15 there, and he was shooting not at close range. Now, he was not trying to take out a specific target. He was just firing on the crowd there. So that is the history of the AR-15 in these kinds of things.
Right, and it's become the target of a lot of liberals very upset about people who use guns for mass shootings, rightfully so. But oftentimes, whether or not they have an AR-15, the big issue is, or I should say access to one. A lot of times they're taking a gun that belonged to someone else, usually a family member, or it's been purchased illegally. So they circumvented the existing gun control laws in order to get it. But I do think the chief problem with people who are mass shooters, or in this case, someone who's an assassin, is that these folks are on the FBI's radar. And they slip through the FBI's fingers almost willingly. And everyone after this happened was like, oh, this guy's probably someone who was on the FBI's radar. And sure enough, when it finally came out that he had been flagged to the FBI, a lot of people were upset. So instead of these sweeping gun bans that a lot of folks want to propose on what they call assault weapons, which even if you go to the California's legal definition, one of the states that bans Armalite rifles and the AK series as well, they don't specify what it means to be an assault weapon. Rather, they give a list of the models that are banned. And so there is not a working definition at the national level or even across states.
I'm surprised. I thought we were going to argue about this. I agree with what you're saying very strongly. The assault-style weapons have been subjected to a lot of scrutiny because of their prominence in these very shocking, very scarring mass shooting events. The issue is that mass shootings, school shootings, Parkland, those kind of things are very not representative of gun violence in America. The overwhelming majority of gun incidents involve handguns, involve the kind of weapons that are pervasive, that are everywhere. There's an uncontrollable amount of illegally owned handguns just on the streets of our country. And those are used the overwhelming majority of the time. Now, they can't do as much damage as rapidly as something like the AR-15, so I understand why, the AR-15 has been used to gun down children at their desks in schools. It's horrifying. It's I think, a difficult problem to prevent. And even if we somehow were able to prevent that amount of violence, you would not even that'd be a drop in the bucket compared to how most gun violence unfolds. So that's always been my response to people who want to clamp down on this type of weapon. And also, the vast majority of people who own an AR-15 are legal gun owners who operate it safely and know how to use this firearm and respect its awesome power and will not be engaged in irresponsible activity with it. The question becomes, how do we prevent deranged people, crazy people, from having access to an AR-15 or to having access to any weapon? And as you point out, in the past, and I don't know yet if it's the case with this guy, but it was the case with the Parkland shooter. It was the case with so many of these others that, yes, they were reported to law enforcement. They were reported specifically to the FBI, and nothing was done. Again, it's another, see something, say something kind of attitude that we have. People do that. People speak up. People understand that there's a danger, and they make law enforcement aware. They make the officials aware, and then nothing gets followed up on. In this case, they have the shooter on the rooftop is being pointed out by bystanders repeatedly. They're videotaping him. You can see video footage of people holding up their cell phone cameras and say, "Oh my God, there's somebody on the roof. Do something about it." And the police, we're going to find out whether there was negligence there, but it certainly seems like it took a lot longer than it was supposed to. When they're calling him out, I mean, why was he able to shoot at all? Why wasn't he taken out before it got to that? I'm reading about the protocol they're supposed to fire, and it's like, or that they're supposed to follow. Like there's a guy with a gun on a rooftop 150 yards away from where Donald Trump is giving a speech, and they're not doing anything about it. They had to wait for him to fire before they were going to take any action. This seems crazy to me. So the official response in terms of gun safety is always a little bit suspect.
Well, it is hilarious branding to say we're going to pass some gun control legislation or try to and label it the Donald Trump Gun Safety Act.
That's not going to fool any Republicans.
It's funny, but even if, instead of going the route of red flag laws, meaning that if the FBI identifies someone that seems to be the type of person who would do a mass shooting based on things they've said, what people around them say, let's let them disarm that individual or have a watchful eye on that individual so something like this does not happen, or a school shooting. I think that even if we took the route of gun control, if what you want to have happen is there to be no more mass shootings or assassinations, does the policy you're pursuing achieve that ends? That's a question that I see a lot of members of the Democratic Party not asking when it comes to this. And a lot of people point to Australia's gun buyback legislation, where they were buying guns back at market rate. In 5 years, they got 659,000 weapons. Do you know how many weapons we have in the United States? 393 million plus. It would take hundreds of years to buy back all of the guns. Moreover, the guns that were surrendered to the state were P rifles and shotguns overwhelmingly. Only 204 were assault rifles. So when we think about, even if we take the most extreme and expensive policy to try and get these guns back, it's very likely to not work. So what do we have? We could actually empower the FBI to respond when people seem like real threats. And I think maybe more people will be on board with that now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this shows that you're a rural leftist. You actually understand guns, and you've been around people, I think, who know how to use them. Yeah, you are yourself a gun owner. Yeah, it's exactly that. And in fact, every time liberals talk about doing more gun control, what ends up happening is the gun manufacturers, the salespeople, they sell tons more weapons because people end up buying them, afraid that that's about to become illegal. So that could very well happen here. Yeah, nobody's going to fall for a Donald Trump gun safety bill. Republicans are still going to vote against it. The politics of this, gun control is not super. Americans support in the abstract having more gun safety or background checks, things like I support that. That's fine. I think it's totally okay to scrutinize people who want to purchase a weapon like this. And yes, and people who have illegal guns who have been convicted of some other crime should not have access to weapons. And I'm fine disarming people who are not law abiding. But that's what we need to do. We need to keep dangerous people from having guns. It's difficult, obviously, but in many cases, we know they're dangerous people, and the government doesn't even do anything about that. So then why are you going to say we'll have even more gun control, and we'll be taking guns from law-abiding people? Mm-hmm. But law-abiding people aren't going to hurt anyone with a gun. In fact, you might want a law-abiding person to have a gun in case there's an emergency. Take them away from the dangerous psycho people. Why don't you start with that? Let's get better at doing that before we talk about any like expanded gun control that's just going to like inevitably not work, because these people, the people we all agree should not have guns, keep getting them.
I don't even have to do the policy wonk thing and be like, let's see the numbers of where this policy has been tried before, because basic common sense says anyone who is going to be an assassin or a mass shooter knows their fate. Yeah. They're very likely to be taken out by law enforcement. They make that calculation that they're willing to die for the crime they are committing. Do you think they're afraid of prison time for illegally owning a gun?
Right.
There are so many guns that if they want one, they will be able to get access to one. They don't care about breaking the law in order to do it. The only channels that will allow us to identify this is if we embolden law enforcement with red flag laws. It's very common sense.
More Rising right after this.